Pour écouter cette session en français, veuillez cliquer en bas de votre écran sur l'onglet Interprétation et sélectionner le drapeau français.
Hello.
Bonjour.
Habari za leo.
On behalf of ICLEI Africa, the Africa Center for Cities, Our Future Cities,
Surge Africa and the Red Cross Crescent Climate Center,
We are delighted to welcome you to the Rise Africa 2023 Action Festival.
Rise Africa is a platform that brings together thinkers, doers, and enablers
to inspire action for sustainable cities.
This is the third edition of our virtual festival.
it brings together insights, practices, and visions from across the continent.
This year's theme is The Cities We Want.
the cities we want.
the cities we want.
The cities we want.
This mirrors the African Union 2063 Agenda vision, the Africa we want.
It is a wonderful Pan-African call for transformative change.
However, the agenda does not adequately embrace urbanization as a potential positive force for improving prosperity, inclusivity, and environmental well-being on the continent.
We need more emphasis on the role of cities and local action. And this festival aims to provide inputs into this agenda.
The cities we have are
Expanding,
incomplete,
inventive,
contested,
facing impending crisis, yet brimming with potential.
The cities we want are
people-centered,
Safe and healthy.
beacons of culture,
unflinchingly modern.
And adapting to change and leading global innovation.
We'll make these cities through
Experimenting,
learning
collaborating,
and amplifying the everyday actions of people who are shaping their cities.
The festival invites you to embrace different ways of knowing,
It invites you to forge new partnerships,
Experiment with new concepts and ideas.
to seek ways to bridge science, business, policy, and the arts.
Together, let's enter this space in the spirit of poetic possibilities.
À l'encre de mon sang, au papier de ma langue, à mes yeux qui tanguent lentement dans le vide, rêvant un jour de laisser des traces de regard sur les villes que nous voulons et imaginons au-delà des vers. Entre deux effluves, mon être crie utopie, mon cœur murmure héritage. Mon âme, elle, chante avenir. De villes riches de leur multiplicité, multiples dans leur diversité, unique pluralité niée hier s'est avancée vers un demain déjà avorté. Enracinement certes, mais ouverture dans ce village planétaire, laisser les sens alertes et réagir. Entendre la cacophonie banalisée des inégalités sociétales criardes laissées en fond sonore, voir et questionner le décor, bâtir et consentir à l'action qui sépare le rêve de la réalité. Sentir la fragrance vitale, belle et verte, inévitable baume au cœur, accepter notre responsabilité de léguer à nos enfants un monde en bonne santé. Démocratiser le goût, que plus aucun palais, d'aucune bouche, d'aucun enfant, d'aucun pays ne soit plus jamais sec. Démocratiser le goût des rêves, des voyages qui s'exécutent quel que soit l'âge, le long des pages, au fil des chapitres, sur le pupitre de la connaissance, seul germe du choix. Toucher l'idée d'infrastructure qui marche allègrement sur le chemin de l'innovation. Enracinement certes, mais ouverture dans ce village planétaire. Laisser les sens alertes, mais surtout réagir.
Yes, hi everyone. Hi, I'm very happy to welcome you to another session of Rise Africa. Yeah, today we have a very, very interesting program. So we're gonna invite you to be part of a very interactive session. So I would like to invite you to put your language preferences because we're gonna have 2 breakout rooms, one in French and one in English. And then we're gonna assign you to the respective breakout rooms. Yeah, so we'll be happy to take your demands and then assign you directly to the breakout rooms that you would prefer. If you speak 2 languages, please say it so that we give the priority to people who only speak one, so either French or English. And then, perfect. Yeah, thank you, everyone. So, waiting for your answers.
You can either write in the chat or say it orally, right, Ayman?
Please just in the chat so that we can see who's said it first, because we have limited places and we want to give the right to the ones who express their interest first. So thank you so much.
Okay. Sorry, someone new entered. So we are talking about African cities collage. So it's important to note that African cities are very diverse. There are 54 countries in Africa with very different cities within each country. So it's important that we focus on nuancing the issues that we talk about for each one that we do. So some issues are more applicable to some cities more than others, and some issues may be actually common to a lot of African cities. So it's important to take that into account when we discuss the different issues that we are going to discuss. Okay, are we ready to start? Do you have any questions before we start? Is everything clear for everyone? All good? Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing this presentation and we are going to go to the collage sites. So I'm going to share with you a link on which all of you can connect. And then after that, if all of you can connect, then you're going to be using the link that I shared with you. And if some of you cannot, you can just follow with the screen that I'm going to share with you. Here is the link. So you will just need to write this password. Can you all just either put a thumb up or tell me once you have managed to enter the site?
I'm in.
Okay, thank you, Marina.
All good.
All right. Vera Luvo, are you managing to get into the site? I think I see you all. Okay, I have shared my screen as well, if necessary. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we have 4 sets of cards. We're gonna, and it's on the left. I think you are all at the same place as me. So as I said, it's a collective intelligence game. So we're going to be working all together. So what I suggest is each of you takes one of the cards here. So I'm going to put 4. And you're going to go on each of the card. Each one of you is going to read what's written on the card. And the objective here is to make links between the different cards. So to try and make a link between a cause and a consequence. There are going to be 4 different categories of cards. They are all linked with each other. We are basically trying to look at the interconnections between all urban issues. And the idea is, as much as we advance, the issues are going to be complexified by the new ones that arrive, because we have interconnections between all of them. So we are going to link the most obvious ones at the beginning and then get layers of complexification. So let's start with access to housing. Sipatise, would you like to start? So if you click on the little arrow on the top right of access to housing, you get access to what's written on the card. Can we let you read it to other participants?
Even in best case scenarios, new formal housing provision meets only a small share of the housing demand. As a result, households are often compelled to rely on self-construction and informal housing markets. Moreover, when it comes to self-construction, the lack of serviced land plots for new urban dwellers or first-time buyers is also challenging.
Okay, so we have the first issue, housing. To get back to the main screen, we click on the little arrow on the top right of the back button. So as we read each card, we're going to link them with each other. Who would like to go with informal settlements? Okay, I see one person is already on it. Luvo, would you like to read it? Oops, Luvo, I don't know if you're on mute or if you can see the card. Oops. Okay. I don't know if Luvo is still here. Okay, Marina?
So, informal settlements. These areas may be vulnerable to different types of exclusion. Urban exclusion, lack of infrastructure and public amenities, lack of accessibility, land rights, illegality or insecurity of tenure, lack of addressing social and economic exclusion, unemployment, poverty, illiteracy, informal economy, insecurity.
Thank you, Marina. So already we have two issues that are quite linked with each other. We're going to discuss a little bit after if what is the cause and what is the consequence, and try and make that link. Could we go to urban sprawl and increasing distance? Vera, can I let you read this one?
Yes, sure. Cities are expanding outward, but services and economic opportunities remain generally concentrated in historic centers, thus increasing travel distances.
Thank you. Okay. And one more before we start putting links between each other. Overconsumption of natural resources. I don't know if Luvo is now seeing it, or if we should just continue. Luvo, are you still with us? Okay. If not, let's go back to Sipatise. I think you are on mute, Sipatise.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm muted. The city uses resources of its hinterland, like water, forests, agricultural production, which can lead to challenges. Urban sprawl gradually eats away at agricultural and natural land. This has many consequences, including loss of biodiversity and reduced carbon sequestration capacities, increased flood risk, reduced agricultural production, etc., etc.
Okay, so let's go back. I'm going to put a little bit more of the first package on the screen, but I would like you to first discuss what are possible causes and consequences between the four that we have just read. So if you had to link some cards with each other, which ones would you link with each other? Don't hesitate to jump right in. We saw, for example, urban sprawl. Yeah, c'est pas ce
that would be access to housing, which is lack of, then leads to the development of informal settlements.
Okay, does everyone agree with that?
I would say that all of them for me are interconnected, because the overconsumption then causes urban sprawl, which also affects access to housing, and then, as mentioned before, it affects informal settlements.
We are going to be facing that issue of everything is interconnected, but can we say that somehow one of the things has some causal consequences on other ones? For example, if we think about what was written at the back of the card, overconsumption of natural resources, urban sprawl gradually eats away at agricultural and natural land. So if we see that, we can think of it as urban sprawl is the factor that leads to overconsumption of natural resources in this very scenario. Do we all agree on that?
Yes, I also agree. I see it that way.
Okay, Sipatise, can you change a little bit the card to reflect what you were saying on the access to housing? You click on the card and then move it to where you to what you think is going to consequences.
It appears that I am unable to move the cards. I'm trying.
Ah, okay. Can any of you move cards or not at all? Okay, I see some of you can, but it's okay if you can't. Okay, let's try. Okay, I see someone put access to housing with informal settlements and someone urban sprawl linking to overconsumption of natural resources. Okay, let's go to the next four ones. Urban planning and development control. Vera, would you like to read that one?
Most African cities lack comprehensive guidelines for medium and long-term urban development. In addition, operational planning documents to support development strategies, zoning and land use plans are also absent. When these documents do exist, enforcement is generally weak.
Okay, we go back. Let's go to now the one on below it, rapid and unplanned urbanization. Marina? Okay, this one has a question. So let's ask the question and not move the rectangle until we have answered.
Okay, so I can read the question.
Yeah.
Okay, between 1984 and 2013, the population of Kinshasa, A, increased by 50%, B, doubled in size, C, tripled in size.
Okay, any bets?
I'm probably going to say
it's
50%.
I would guess that it tripled in size.
Okay. I think it's Vera who said me too. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Marina, I let you move the triangle and get out of this suspense.
So I go back, right?
No, you move the triangle to see the answer.
Oh, well done.
So it tripled in size. I'll let you read the answer.
It tripled. As a result of major population growth and rural exodus, many African cities are expanding rapidly. Over the last 30 years, the population of Kinshasa has tripled in size and urban sprawl has increased twofold.
Yeah, so urban sprawl and tripling in size, this kind of huge increase is very true for capital cities, but in the future 10 or 20 years, it's mostly secondary and middle-sized cities that are expected to host the large share, the lion's share of this growth that is going to happen. But Kinshasa is a very good example of how population growth has expanded horizontally rather than vertically. Okay, rural-urban migration. Sipatise?
Rural-urban migration are driven by agricultural and, is it political? There's a,
yes,
yeah,
it's political
something
crisis.
hiding it, yes. And political crises like wars, as well as lack of economic opportunities in rural areas. For example, in some neighborhoods of the plain of Antananarivo, natural growth accounts for 44% of the total number of new city dwellers, while 56% stem from rural-urban migrations.
Yes, Antananarivo is the capital of Madagascar. So it's an example of so it's a Francophone country. So it's an example of how rural exodus has had an impact on the population of the city. It's located on a lot of plains and the rivers, so it's very affected by floods. So this high population growth and uncontrolled has led to people settling in areas which should be protected for to ensure that there is no flooding of their settlement actually. So that has a lot of implications also for the population. Okay, the last one, natural population growth. Who goes for that one? I see someone is already on it, but I don't know. I don't know which one. Okay, Vera?
Natural population growth is the difference between the number of live births and the number of deaths over a given time period, because fertility rates are high in several countries. Oh, I don't.
Oh, sorry, someone say it's me. Sorry.
No worries. Several countries' population growth is considerably high in Africa.
Okay, and of course it's different in different countries. The natural population growth. Okay, so just as a little specification here, why do we precise natural population growth?
I think natural population growth excludes migration patterns.
Exactly.
Like rural-urban migration.
Exactly. Yes. So what do we have here in terms of themes in all of these cards? Can we regroup the different cards in terms of themes? Okay. I see rural urban migration moving to on the left of rapid unplanned urbanization. What does that go with rural urban migration? Yep, I see someone on it, but hesitating. Yeah. So, okay, interesting. Can the person who moved the natural population growth explain why they put it here?
So, well, in the South African context, a lot of the time, if there's rapid unplanned urbanization in the form of informal settlements, communities will become established, which will mean that either the population grows naturally because the quality of life is a bit better there than as opposed to where they were moving from, or migration will happen. But I suppose in this case, it's more natural population growth.
Mm. Does everyone have the same view, or? Patricia, you were going to say something?
I would say it can be seen as sometimes being the other way around. Like natural growth would lead to rural-urban migration and then ultimately unplanned urbanization.
Okay.
So it's not always the case. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, interesting. So here what I'm going to say is that there's no correct answer. The climate collage initially was a very kind of rigid, where there's a correct sequence of cost to consequence. For cities, it's very different. There's no one correction, and it's true for all cities. Nevertheless, here what we can say is that there is one factor, which is basically, it's not an unmovable, but it's one overall factor, which is demography, and that's kind of that gets within it natural population growth and rural-urban migration. Now, it's true that rural-urban migration may lead to natural population growth within some areas. It's true also that natural population growth in some rural areas might lead to exodus, because people are seeking for jobs, and jobs are more likely to be provided in cities, etc. But overall, this demographic high growth, because if it was not as high, it would be easier to plan, would be a factor causing the rapid and unplanned urbanization. So what I would recommend rather is to say that the demography is a theme. So natural population growth combined with rural-urban migration lead to rapid and unplanned urbanization. Because even if there are good planning documents, which maybe you can share what's your experience in South Africa, because a few, actually, oh no, except for Sipatise, a few of you are in South Africa, so you know what is the history of planning documentation. But from my experience there is quite a few planning documents, and they are enforced, and so these cannot always work if there is a too high of a demographic change, and because there's so much evolution. Okay, and so if we had to put links between all cards, let's say there's one card that we haven't spoken about yet, urban planning and development control. Where would you put that? How would you link it to other cards?
I would say that lack of urban planning and development control will ultimately lead to, it's a matter of an egg and a chicken, would lead to unplanned urbanization, and unplanned urbanization would also result to lack of urban planning.
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely the question of the egg or the chicken, as you say. But so let's say in this very case, so we have demography on one side, then we have the rapid and unplanned urbanization, which is, we found the consequence. Within this rapid unplanned urbanization, there is we can consider that urban sprawl and increasing distance is one of the consequences of that. And that goes with overconsumption of natural land. And we could actually even lead to one more consequence of that. Do we agree on this? Yes, I see no one changing the cards allocation, so I assume that yes. And then urban planning and development control happens somewhere around here, because when you do urban planning, you do it on the basis of the demographic projections that your country makes or your city makes. So based on how many people you think will be in Johannesburg or Cape Town or Rotterdam in 50 years, or 20 years, then you will plan, okay, I need that many roads, I need those many services of transport, etc. And access to housing and the link with informal settlements would be linked with that planning and with the rapid urbanization. So this would be a little bit on the side, let's say, but informal settlements can be linked to urban sprawl and increasing distances in some cases. Perhaps some of you can provide a case of informal settlements in your city which has led to urban sprawl. In Cape Town, perhaps.
Okay, so I'm also in Cape Town.
Yeah.
So I think one of the reasons would be high rental costs in and around the central business districts. So people will move into cheaper accommodation or cheaper lands or free land, which is informal. And but then that will mean that they will end up spending more on traveling from home to areas of work.
And so that does mean it goes into urban sprawl, correct?
Yes.
So sometimes it's different. In some cities, the informal settlements are in the core of the city. It happens in Antananarivo, for example. It's some of them are very much outside, but some of them are in the very center, in those areas that get flooded very often. So that is a different cause consequence, but more often than not, informal settlements are increasing urban sprawl. And that has an impact on access to housing, of course. And so you had mentioned that informal settlements is a consequence of access to housing. Okay.
Yeah. So also to add on that, while what I've described previously is more like a self-regulating process, it can also be an effect of policies. Like in South Africa as a whole, there was an RDP, it's called Reconstruction and Development Policy, which was a policy that was aimed at providing previously disadvantaged people with housing. So that type of housing was not conceived in a way like it will be your block of flats or your block of apartments. Those were freestanding houses. And for that, you needed large areas of land to accommodate millions and millions of people. So that cheap land will usually be far away from centers of economic development and so on. So yeah, it can also be an impact of not so well thought policies.
Very interesting, and that makes the link between urban planning and development control. That's a very policy that you're talking about, and access to housing and informal settlements. Yeah. Luvo, I think you're raising your hand.
Yes. Just to add on to or to continue on that point of informal settlements as resulting in urban sprawl. You also in Pretoria, I spent a lot of my time in Pretoria. You will find that a lot of at least some of the informal settlements are directly attached to former townships, former Black township areas, which are already developed in the outskirts of the city in general. So they add to that sprawl by expanding the cities outwards, and because then those people, that there's not enough housing in those areas for those people to kind of evolve over time.
Yeah, thank you for raising that point, because that's a very specific point to South Africa due to the apartheid and to the heritage of that. And for sure in South Africa, in most cities, and especially in biggest cities like Pretoria you mentioned, but also Cape Town and Johannesburg, you would find that the urban sprawl has actually been plotted with the creation of these townships. So it's been the urban sprawl has already taken place in a planned manner, and is continuing on the basis of this poor policy making. And it shows the difference in the diversity and the fact that the process is not the same everywhere. So thanks for that. Okay, so we are going to move to the second set of cards. What is this? Okay, I clicked too fast. So I'm going to put them on the table. Okay. Luvo, are you still with us? Would you like to read one of the cards?
Yes, I am. Which one should I look at?
All right. So if you go to Poverty and Low Human Development Index, you click on the top right little arrow.
Okay, all right. I'm looking at it. It says, according to the World Bank data, in 2019, 35.1% of the population of sub-Saharan Africa lived on less than $1.90 a day. This level of poverty explains the city's low financing capacity, but it is also a consequence of its dysfunctional nature. Beyond the financial issue, poverty has a wider impact on human development, literacy, lack of education, lack of access to healthcare, etc.
Thank you. I did say we are going to talk a lot about the problems, okay? So we are going to talk about the solutions after that. Okay, second one. Who would like to talk about undersized and outdated infrastructure?
Okay.
Patisse, we listen to you.
Infrastructure is aging and maintenance budgets are low. Sometimes infrastructure was designed to serve a smaller population and not expanded in line with urban growth.
Okay. Just as a side note, the pictures that you see, for example, this one for undersized and outdated infrastructure was taken each time you have the city where it was taken, and it's always an African city. So here it's Accra in Ghana. Okay, the next one, technical and financial capacities of cities, sorry. Vera?
Yeah. African cities have limited financial resources. Most have budgets of $1 to $10 per inhabitant, compared to 5,000 in Paris. At most, such budgets only cover the operational aspects, meaning their capacity for investment is almost non-existent, and maintenance works inadequate. Technical capacities can also be lacking in skilled human resources, materials, and equipment.
Okay. Let's go back. Marina, go with greenhouse gases emission. Oh, you always have the questions.
That's fine. It's more fun. It's again with Kinshasa. What is the average carbon footprint of a Kinshasa resident in terms of tons of CO2 equivalent per year? So A, 1 ton, B, 5 tons, C, 10 tons.
And while you think, I'll add that the average that we should all have per inhabitant that we all should all have as a carbon footprint should be 2 tons, so that we do not go above the 1.5 degree increase. So the only option in those is the 1 ton, which would be the adequate one, so that we don't go beyond the increase of temperature. Okay, so what are the bets?
I think 5.
5?
I hope 5.
I would say 110.
You would say 10, Patisse?
1.
1, okay. All right.
I also want to say 1.
Okay, 1 for Luvo. All right, no one thinks 10. Okay, let's see. 1 ton.
Yeah, okay. For comparison, the average carbon footprint of a French person is 10 tons of CO2. Greenhouse gas emissions are mainly generated by the transport and construction sectors. However, Africa is still the continent with the lowest GHG emissions.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to continue reading all the cards of this set so we can advance, so we can put them all, link them all together. Okay, public transport and infrastructure. Luvo?
All right, African cities have little infrastructure in terms of public and multimodal transport systems, such as subways, BRT systems, tramways. And if they do exist, they often provide few or no links to poor neighborhoods. This has an impact on social exclusion and encourages the use of polluting motor vehicles.
Thanks, Luvo. Increasing motor vehicle use.
Due to the lack of public transport infrastructure and the longer distances people travel to access services, the number of motor vehicles is on the rise. For instance, in Cotonou, motorbike taxis have become a common mode of transport. This intensive use results in greater fossil fuel consumption.
Cotonou is the main economic city in Benin, in West Africa. So the picture above is taken there. Okay, businesses and job opportunities. Marina.
Industry and large businesses, and thus formal employment, are scarce in many cities. This is partly caused by urban constraints, lack of access to land and infrastructure for companies, but also a variety of other factors. Businesses' lack of investment capacity, skilled labor shortages, etc.
Okay. Access to basic services, water, sanitation, and electricity. Vera.
Yeah. African cities are characterized by poor infrastructure and therefore have limited access to essential services, water, sanitation, waste and collection, and treatment.
Okay. All right, I think I'm going to add the last ones up. And this one. Okay. You can see as you read, you can see that some of the things we have talked about in the first set. So we are going to be able to make those links. So air, water, and soil pollution. Luvo? Okay, Luvo must. Okay.
All right. Inadequate wastewater and waste management leads to contamination of soil, rivers, and water tables. Transportation and industrial activities, etc., cause air pollution with serious consequences for human health.
Yes, thank you. So the picture was taken in Niamey, in Niger. Damage to biodiversity. Sipatise? The beautiful little bird from Abidjan in Ivory Coast.
Land take and global warming can affect or destroy the habitat of animals and plant species and result in their extinction.
Yes. Okay, alternative services systems. Vera?
Alternative systems are developed to provide access to basic services, for example, water kiosks, fountains, wells, and tanker trucks. For access to drinking water, alternative systems also often apply for education, healthcare, etc.
Okay. And the last one, informal economy. Marina?
The informal sector generally represents a significant part of the economy. It includes low-paying activities, street vendors, small retailers, artisans, waste collectors, etc., but also sometimes lucrative activities. These activities are not subject to taxation. However, sometimes this sector provides a response to the lack of urban services. for example.
Okay. So we've got a lot of cards. Let's see now which cards we can put together. So which ones are linked together, which ones are rather a cause or a consequence, which if we had to put the causes on one side and consequence, how would it look? So let's try and do it together, card by card. We all take a card and try and put it somewhere. Luvo, which card would you go to?
Okay.
If you took, for example, public transport infrastructure.
Yes. Which one?
It's this one, sorry.
Yes, okay.
Okay. If you had to link it with the first cards we had, where would it be?
The public transport.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we talked about demography. We said that so that is a factor that is more or less a given. It's difficult to act upon this one. With urban planning and development control, which is this one something that can be a lever for action for governments. And then that leads to rapid unplanned urbanization if such urban planning and development control is poor.
Oh, sorry. So we are mixing them all together now.
Yes.
Right.
The idea is to link all the cards together and to be able to explain the links between different sets of cards. We're going to, yeah.
All right. Okay. No, I see. I would say then I would put that one is so urban sprawl with insufficient public transport infrastructure would then result in the increased motor vehicle use, which would also contribute to an increase in greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay. So let's leave it like that for now. Where can we put the other ones? Someone else, perhaps Vera, where would you put technical and financial capacities of cities?
Yeah, I was thinking about it for a little bit because I think it's more of a general reason, and I think it can be the easiest would be to tie it again to the public transport infrastructure that is not great and access to basic services, but also it relates a lot to informal economy because if there is not enough tax base and there is not enough income that goes to the local authorities, then of course the capacity of cities is also low. So I think I would go with this, and then maybe the both of them can move next to the public transport infrastructure and access to basic services.
Okay. What else is linked to informal economy? Since you are going on the economy side in the second set of cards. Exactly.
Yeah, the business and job opportunities, of course.
Okay. And then we have undersized and undersized and outdated infrastructure. I don't know if it's you who moved it, but it goes with access to basic services. Okay. Okay. And I would like to mention something about the technical and financial capacities of cities. You have linked it with economy, and that's totally. I mean, I don't want to say correct, but it makes a lot of sense because of course it has implications. But what else could you link it to within the first set of cards? It's linked to the capacities of cities. Sipatise, yeah?
I would take technical and financial capacities and link it with urban planning and development.
Yeah.
Because without that kind of technical capacity, urban planning and development control will not take place. And as a result, the rest of the issues will come into play.
Okay. Yeah. So that is possible, and with keeping those ones also linked. How? Because access to housing, it also goes where, according to what Vera had started putting together.
Urban sprawl.
It does go with urban sprawl, which is where is it now?
Are they up? Yeah.
It's here. Yeah, totally. So it goes, and it goes together with also the access to services. So if you put access to services on one side, you can actually add different kind of services. So there is the transport, there is the housing, there is what else do we have as services? Okay, we might have it after. And we have the alternative services systems. Exactly. And informal settlements, it was linked to housing, so we can put it underneath with this here. Informal settlements going here. And overconsumption of natural resources, we had put next to it, and it actually links to greenhouse gas emissions. We have some more left: air, water, and soil pollution, damage to biodiversity, poverty, and low human index. Where would you put these ones, Marina?
So I would put the air, water, and soil pollution next to the overconsumption of natural resources, and then next to that, the damage to biodiversity.
Okay. Yeah, you can go ahead. Okay. And what about poverty and low human development index?
See, they're all linked. It's so hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
I mean, it's applicable to all of them.
Yeah, that's true. But would you consider it as a beginning factor, like as a given factor, or rather as a consequence? Where along this kind of factor consequence axis would you put it? Axis would you put it? At the beginning, more around the factors, or rather at the end? It's completely debatable. It depends on, yeah.
I'm tending to go for in the middle. Maybe because of rapid unplanned urbanization, then the poverty can come in, then informal economy. But again, it can also come after. I'd be keen to hear what other people think as well.
Okay, we'll put it in the middle for now. All right, going to the third lot. So we are going to continue for maybe 10-15 minutes, and we are not going to finish the third set. It's normal. It was planned like this, that we wouldn't have the time. But you see the point that we have a lot of different issues, and they are all interconnected. So don't be too frustrated if we don't go until the end before we move to the next stage. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 8 cards. Maybe we can read the 8, try to place them, and then we go to the next stage. Okay. Climate change. Big one. Sipatise, would you like to read that one?
climate change, the effects of climate change heighten the risks in urban areas.
Okay, and here you have a little diagram of all the types of climate risks. Social inequality and vulnerable population. Sorry, Luvo? Oops, am I the only one who doesn't hear Luvo? Ah, no, I think she's on mute. Oops.
Yes.
Okay, we can hear you now.
All right, thank you. According to UN Habitat 2010, African cities are the most unequal with a Gini index of 0.529 compared to 0.305 for the European area, 0 being the perfect equality and 1 being extreme inequality. These inequalities are reflected in the spatial inequalities, relatively well-off neighborhoods alongside shanty towns, and sometimes in social conflicts. In addition, some under-integrated neighborhoods sometimes concentrate the most vulnerable populations, such as women, disabled people, and elderly people, etc.
Okay. Well, you know this card very well because South Africa you are all based or from South Africa, so you know very well this issue. I think South Africa is one of the highest inequality Gini index in the world, if not the highest. Okay, obsolete, insufficient, or no land registers. Vera?
Land registers serve 2 main goals. 1, controlling land ownership. 2, implementing taxation and financing urban public services. However, setting up a land registry is expensive and updating it is also challenging, taking into account rapid and informal urbanization and low capacities.
Okay. The next one, social cultural context. Marina?
In each country, and even in each city, different experience of public space, ways to use infrastructure and services, etc., are to be considered. Local cultures, lifestyles, and specific needs must be the starting point of the project. Unfortunately, many projects have failed due to the lack of coherence with local habits and social acceptability.
Thanks a lot. Human health, Supatise.
Low rates of access to drinking water and the use of alternative systems, water and air pollution, heat waves, in addition to limited access to health services can affect human health and well-being, which is the quality of life.
Thank you. Traffic congestion, Luvo? Oh, okay. Not Marina having this question this time.
How long does it take to travel by car? There's 6.7 kilometers between these two places in Monrovia, when according to Google Maps, it should take 12 minutes.
So Monrovia is the capital city of Liberia.
So is it 25 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours?
I'm going to say an hour.
Me too.
I will go for an hour as well, but yeah, it depends if it's a peak, like morning, afternoon peak, or off peak.
Yeah,
that's 1 hour.
That's actually a good point. Nuvo?
Okay. I'll also say 1 hour, yeah.
Okay. So if you move the rectangle, what is the... Oh, do you want me to do it?
Yes, please, because I was looking at the screen now.
Okay, B, 1 hour. We are all now on the same page. 1 hour instead of 12 minutes is already an issue. Traffic congestion is a major problem in Monrovia, as in many African cities. And that, I'm sure you can all relate to. Management and financing of urban services. Vera?
Urban services, water and sanitation, waste management, electricity, transport are struggling to keep up with rapid urbanization. There is often a lack of funding for these services, low capacity of the state, city to subsidize them, low capacity of the inhabitants to pay for the services. The economic sustainability of these services is thus weakened, and the operators in charge of managing them have little capacity for investment.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we have a little, I'm just going to put back the other ones so that we have a little bit of time to just discuss this one. Okay, how would you now change or put the different cards that we have here within the cards that we've already placed? Maybe move them around yourself where you think they make most sense, and yeah, and then we can explain what themes go together. And yeah, feel free to move other cards and to change things around. Okay. So we have obsolete, insufficient, or no land registers, which is within urban planning, technical and financial capacities, etc. of cities. We have climate change that's moved next to poverty and low human development index. We have social inequalities and vulnerable population next to access to housing, and human health and traffic congestion next to increased vehicle use and access to services. Okay, so just for 5 minutes, so you see on the left of your screen you have little arrows that you can, if you click on it, you can put an arrow between one card and another, so it will link them together. So if you had to put some links, where would you put them? Knowing that there are some links between the cards that you've kind of already made because they are next to each other, but would you also link them to other cards? Would you link, for example, damage to biodiversity to something else than a consumption of natural resources? So maybe I see one link has been made between, okay, urban planning and development control linked to access to housing, okay. Have rapid and planned urbanization next to urban sprawl. We could link traffic congestion to air, water, and soil pollution. Or, for example, undersized and outdated infrastructure with human health. I see urban planning and development control linked to informal economy. Yeah. Obsolete and insufficient or no land registers with access to housing. Yeah. What else have we got? Poverty and low human development index with social inequality and vulnerable population. Totally. Management and financing of urban services linked to access to basic services, water, sanitation, and electricity. Yep. And I think there's one I hadn't seen, access to basic services and sanitation, electricity linked to, no, sorry, poverty and low human development index linked to greenhouse gas emissions. Is this correct? I mean, is this what, am I reading the right thing?
No, it should be climate change.
Climate change.
Linked to.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Maybe
Okay.
I can do the thing. Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So we're gonna stop here, and just let's look at this. What's the main feature that we take out from this, basically? But that you've already said from in previous moments. Basically, it's very complex and it's all interconnected. It's difficult, as Sipati say, you said it's between the egg and the chicken. It's very difficult to say, okay, this happened first. I gave a little bit of a direction to it, but that is just one possible way to see it. There are very different possible ways to see it, and it actually depends on the city we talk about. So we could have decided to say, okay, we are going to do this specific game just about Johannesburg. And then maybe it would have been it would have looked a little bit different based on how it is in Johannesburg or Cape Town or any other town that we could have chosen. So the idea is to say it's all interconnected, and it's kind of difficult to say, okay, one thing only is important. It's only technical and financial capacities of cities that will make sure that there are no social inequality and vulnerable people. No, there are multiple factors actually that have an effect on that. Okay? So now we are going to the next phase. Now that we have talked about all these issues and all these problems and the interdependencies, I'm going to give you a few minutes just to write down, so you can take one of these post-it notes here, you put it here, and you just write in it what are your impressions at the end of this game, whether that's a feeling, a thought, what you take out from it. If you had one thing that you would remember from it, something that struck you when we talked about it. So just write something that has the first thing that comes to your mind, and then we're gonna do a little round table. I'll leave you minutes to think. And you can write some more than one if you like. I'll give you a little bit of time. Okay. Let's see, 3. Okay. Okay. Does someone want a little bit more time to finish? Okay. Let's go around then. Who wants to start? Who wants to share?
I'm happy to start.
Okay, go ahead, Marina.
So I just wrote that it's so, I almost want to say obvious, but it's so clear that everything is so interlinked. Not just if you are approaching this from an urban planning perspective, but whichever department that one works on in a city council, or if they are stakeholders working within cities or urban environments. I just feel it's so apparent that you can't tackle one issue without it either having positive or negative consequences or impacts on other sectors. And yeah, I think this is quite an easy way of showing exactly where those links are visually. So you can see, oh, if this happens in this sector, if we continue to rely on cars, we'll have more greenhouse gas emissions because there's traffic congestion. So I think it really shows how interlinked everything is.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. You work, yeah, and you work at ICLEI, so you definitely work on this kind of
yeah, and I used to work at the City of Cape Town, actually, where Super Tuesday works. So
you used to work at the City of Cape Town?
Yeah, in the mayor's office. Yeah.
Okay, so you had the first-hand experience of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Who else would like to share? Sipatese? I don't know if you are talking or if you are on mute. Okay, maybe we can go to Luvo.
Yeah, my point is the one in purple, which basically also ties in with what Marina had mentioned about how connected everything really is. And so that for me, the overall transformation of any place does require all these different elements and all these different departments to have a level of integration, but to also understand that they each need to do their bit really, that to contribute to the overall transformation picture.
Yeah, and in South Africa you have quite developed urban services and urban departments in cities, especially in the big ones. So you definitely have all those different expertise. So the issues that you are facing are a little bit different from those that we might have talked about during this session. Okay, thank you, Luvo. Vera?
Yeah, I wrote the yellow card, which was more, for me, it was rather about methodological point of view. In the institute where I work, we also have a lot of executive education programs, and we have a whole course on urban complexity, and there we talk about the wicked problems. And I find this a very nice way indeed to visualize that it's very difficult to identify cause and effect, but also that every single thing that you do has multiple effects afterwards, and you cannot just think very one-dimensionally and say, if there is lack of employment opportunities, what I should do is give everybody a laptop so that they can access the internet, and then it will all magically improve. So I think it's very nice to visualize those kind of it's a nice method to visualize this.
Yeah, I'd like to echo this. There was one card around the cadastre and the addresses, and I have a colleague right now who's working on a project in Togo to do the addressing basically in the entire town, which is different from the land register. Land register is very administrative and very regulatory. It has regulatory application, while addressing is just about people having an address. So it's not necessarily as much of a regulatory heavy process. But the issue, and you might say, okay, you just have to have a digital platform and then you put it on the digital platform and it takes a few months maybe, and some people going to each address and that's done. But actually, it's not that simple. It's not just having the digital platform working and having someone putting the addresses. It's about people accepting that it's done, about people using the system. So you have to actually sensitize people to use it. And people have a lot of interest in having such thing work, because then they can do deliveries more easily. If they have an issue and an ambulance needs to come to them, of course, it's going to be easier, etc. But it's also from an administrative point of view, very important, because if you have a database of your population and their addresses, then it's much easier to collect taxes, for example, and have a sane, healthy revenue base for your city. But it's not as simple as just, oh, okay, we have a digital database and we just need to fill it in. No, it's much more complex than that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, sorry?
No, I just wanted to say that it's a lot about the correct identification of what solution are you trying to bring forward to which problem.
Yeah.
So it's not about one part or the other, but really the combination of the two. But I guess we'll talk about that in the solutions part.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Sipatise, I don't know if you're still with us.
Yes,
Yeah?
sorry, I got slight tech problems, but
No
now sorted.
issue. You're back. Okay.
Yeah, I think for me, two things come into mind when we were talking about what Google Maps says and what the actual travel time ends up being. That was my reality this morning. So it's a real thing here in South Africa and in Cape Town.
Yeah.
So that's me. Like, I'm supposed to be traveling for 30 minutes according to, or when the traffic is normal. But then during peak hours, that can go up to 90 to more than 100 minutes. So almost 2 hours. And also when we were talking about these kind of challenges, I think, yes, these are challenges, and all of us, we are practitioners. We are seeing them from a practitioner's perspective. But when you go into the ground, the feelings or the sentiments are different, because there's always that element of experience that this is your reality. I might find it fascinating from an academic or research or policy perspective, but for someone else, it's a reality. That there's deforestation taking place and what their water sources being contaminated. So all those things, I always try to think, okay, what if I was in that person's shoe? So by that, like, I'm encouraging all practitioners, ourselves and everyone, to always bear that in mind, that it might be our job as practitioners, but we are dealing with human lives and human realities.
Yeah, humbling thoughts. Thank you so much. Does anyone want to add something or respond? Is it something you usually do to put yourself in the shoes of the people that you are planning for?
Just to add, while everyone else is still silent, I think putting yourself in their shoes is okay, but I think public participation beyond just being a tick box exercise is also important, because it builds that trust. In our context, for instance, you can plan, and when you start, when you are in the construction phase, and you think you've done public participation, but it was not adequate in someone else's eyes. Maybe the stakeholders that you considered or that you respected or that you felt needed to be included are happy. But then a new stakeholder comes into play and your whole project or process get disrupted. So that's why you need to wear different hats as a practitioner and consider everyone. There would always be people who are unpleasant to deal with. But the fact that they are unpleasant to deal with or they are difficult or challenging doesn't mean that sideline them or ignore them. Otherwise, they might cause problems.
Yeah, I think it's a very relevant point in terms of the complexity of the issues are also linked to the variety of stakeholders. And that's a very good transition to our next and final phase of solutions. I just wanted to add my own parts of playing to the game, because that was actually the first time that I animated one of those collage for the African cities one. And I was it was really interesting for me to to see how much of the importance of local context and history, for example, you are all from South Africa or based there. So it's very important to remind, even when we are doing here, we are talking about the whole continent. So of course we can find similarities and differences, but there's always the importance when we do a project of knowing, of studying and knowing very well the local context, whether it's historic or in terms of soil, etc., in order to plan properly. So yeah, South Africa has a very specific history, but I mean there's always a lot of things to be taken into account. So that was very interesting to discuss all that with you from that point of view. Okay, so we are now going to our last points, which is two, basically. I suggest two things. There's written 45 minutes, but we actually have only 15 for this one. So it's to choose a character. So between ministry, municipality, civil society, urban service company, economic operator, or financing institution. Or if you think of somebody else, then Joker, you can use somebody else. And to propose actions that character could be applying to improve the situation. So to improve urban planning, or with relation to one of the cards that we discussed. So that is one way to go around. Or since we have little time, perhaps we can just go around the table and maybe during the session, while we were looking at different cards, since we talked a lot about the negatives, maybe you have some positive experiences in the cities that you have worked in. So I noted that one of you is working as a town planner and land use control. One of you is working in the Institute for Housing and Development. One of you is working in Cape Town City for policy and strategy. So maybe, yeah, because it's 35 and it actually ends at 45. So we've gone a little bit too slow. So maybe each one of us can talk about one positive planning example of how the city you worked in, or another city that you've studied or that you know about, has implemented a solution that works for a specific issue. So how would you like to go around?
Okay, for City of Cape Town, then that will be the municipality. So when it comes to congestion, a few years ago, I think it's almost a decade now, around about 10 years ago, we implemented the IRT, Integrated Rapid Transit System. It worked well on the main freeway from the CBD to the main to the largest township where most of the employers are coming from. So there was a bus lane done there, constructed there. So it worked well for a while, but then I think now the main challenge is behavioral. So the technical part is done, but then the behavior change of drivers as well as enforcement are still lacking. So there's more work needed to be done on that. But having that high occupancy vehicle lane did alleviate much of the traveling time, especially if you are traveling by public transport. So that encouraged people to opt public transport than private cars.
Okay, very interesting. You said the IRT integrated?
In RIT, rapid bus transit, BRT, I mean rapid bus transit.
Okay, yeah. Okay, very interesting. Who else has an example to share?
For me, I would say the urban service companies. Like I live in Johannesburg, and I found that I live in an apartment block. And of course, with the load shedding and the power struggles that we're having, what I found very helpful that the city has for this building is a gas line, right? Some bulk gas infrastructure, which is something, you know, I didn't experience in Pretoria, for instance. So then it provides an alternate power source for powering up the house and cooking and everything. So then we have a gas stove, even though we do live in an apartment block, and we are able to use that power source when there's no electricity. Yeah.
Okay, so through gas, that's it?
Yes. So
okay.
Yeah, I think it would link to urban service companies. I'm not sure.
Okay.
And sorry, just one more. I think also municipality is to mention the land use application system that the city of Johannesburg has, where they have basically digitized, or I don't know if digitized is the right word, but they have taken it online where you can submit applications, and I've found that I've had a very good experience in terms of their response time and how that system runs for the city of Johannesburg. Of course, other cities, it's still a struggle, but yeah, I found that very, very helpful with them.
Okay. You mean that they are responding very quickly, and they are okay, yeah.
Yes, that they are that is actually quite efficient. You know, it's not one of those systems where you submit something online and you're really unsure what's happening for very extended time.
Okay. Is it the same? Is it the case also in Cape Town for those living in Cape Town? Or maybe unknown.
Yes, it's almost the same.
Okay. That's good, because that's one of the difficult ones, to have an efficient land use application system. So it's good that it's a very positive one. And it means the investments have been made so that it's done. And that has a very concrete a consequence for the city, which is that it can levy taxes, collect levies and taxes much more easily. So that's a smart kind of a city investment. Okay, Vera and Marina.
I can go. What's the joker?
The joker is if you talk about another actor that is not civil society, municipality, ministries. For example, if you say, okay, universities have a big part to play in the research and development of urban planning practices, for example, you would take the joker because it's not an economic operator, it's not a financing institution, etc.
Okay.
Yeah. You can now use that game to play it with other people and explain it.
Okay. I mean, I'd be happy to give maybe an example from Italy's experience. So we also work through not just on climate change, but we also work through things like nature-based solutions and biodiversity and nature in cities. And so often what we found when we do projects in our cities, they want to plan with nature, they want to develop infrastructure that's nature-based, but sometimes they don't know how, they don't have the skills. So we found that often what's useful is gathering cities on a platform where they can learn from one another, they can inspire one another. And we have a dedicated platform called Cities with Nature, the action platform. And we've seen that it works really well because it's a safe space, it's virtual, but we also have events and things, but they can really see what works and what doesn't in perhaps their peer cities with similar struggles, and also maybe much larger cities, and then maybe they're tiny villages that really want to use flood attenuation to make their cities more resilient, but they don't know how, and they look to huge cities that have done it in China, for example. And what's nice is that platforms like this are recognized by, for example, the Secretariat to the Convention on Biological Diversity, because they can not only share knowledge from one another, but they can register and they can monitor what they're actually doing in their cities, how they actually contribute to, for example, the global biodiversity framework. So it gives them quite a nice idea of, okay, we're doing this, but is it actually having an impact? And how are we doing in terms of, achieving the goals? So that's really quite a cool thing that we found in working with cities.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you. Vera.
Yes, I will just quickly share it because I don't want to keep anybody longer. But I think my main experience of working in African cities is that there's such an immense potential and so much innovation among the people and among the community, and the NGO and the people are actually driven to create change. And I think one project that relates to that very nicely is in Matare in Nairobi. We were working with well, essentially, it's a kind of a digital literacy hub where people from the informal settlement can come and learn various skills that would be helpful for them for further job opportunities. But it started out just as a government project, imposing it kind of in a certain location, and them just saying, okay, now we have the computer, so everybody's very welcome to come and kind of teach themselves, and that did not take off at all. People were coming there for gambling and did not really use the program as intended at all. And then there was a person who we found within the community who really wanted to have a more educational purpose for this space, and to be cooperate also with the local schools about bringing children to learn there. So it really became, with his innovative thinking and with his drive, it became really a communal space, a part of just an imposed location where nobody's actually participating in anything. So those kind of things I find really fascinating. It always comes in my experiences in my projects that I do with our teams, and it's fascinating.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, there's so much happening in every city, and so much that the practitioners, as Sebastian mentioned, have a hand-on and so much that they don't have a hand-on. So there's a room for good and bad surprises, I guess, but there's a lot of things of examples like that that should be, I guess, more talked about rather than the issues that we've talked a lot about today. Okay, so we've reached the end of this session. Thank you so much for participating. I just want to close by thanking you first for being very active for this whole session, which was quite long. So thank you a lot for that. I think that's also one of the points and one of the reasons why it's interesting. So all of these elements are available online, so you will keep having access to it. And you can definitely, someone mentioned that they were interested in the methodology of the game, etc. You can definitely reuse it. It's really on the basis of free usage. I will also share with you, but I mean, equally, we'll share with you by email the link toward where you can access all of that. And by the end of this year, there will be videos linked to each of the cards that we have talked about and those that we haven't had the time to talk about with solutions. So if you are interested and you want to have more inspiring solutions, since we didn't have much time to dwell on that, there's going to be so it's videos of people who are practitioners or residents or academics in urban planning in cities of Africa, and they are filmed in their cities talking about the specific issue on each of the cards. So I really encourage you to use that if that can be useful in your daily responsibilities. And I really thank you all for being so active. I hope you took. I hope that was useful for you too, and I wish you a very good end of day and end of seminar if you participate to other sessions.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.